Hey lads, another commentary video. This time we are in Algeth'ar's Academy or Harry Potter Academy, and this will be the Restoration Shaman point of view. I'll be going through some of the mechanics of the dungeon and some of the cooldowns and usages that you want to do as a Restoration Shaman. So, it's a Tyrannical +18 run. So keep that in mind. The trash is going to be easier, but I'll try to go through some of the mechanics of the trash as well, which are important, especially in fortified weeks. So first, make sure you pick your buff. There's 4 mobs in this starting area, and once you talk to one of them, you got a 5% buff to one of your stats. Right now, this one just gave me 5% versatility, but you can pick the stat that you would like that suits you best. In some runs, if your, let's say, crit is low, you can pick your crit. And this one, I just wanted to reduce the amount of damage I take from bosses and, of course, do 5% more damage, so I picked the verse. In this first area, there's 2 types of mobs. You see the beasts that charge around. They also enrage, so if you can shoot them at some time or stun them, that would reduce the amount of damage that your group takes. And then you have the flowers. The small flowers you cleave, the big flowers do the green puddles on the ground. They will just keep casting that every now and then, and that means that you will be moving a lot. Not ideal for a shaman, as you can see, especially if you pull 2 of the big flowers. You'll be constantly on the move. So your job here, obviously, is not to cast healing or acid rain. The tank is going to be moving the mobs whatsoever. So your job is basically to spot heal people who get hit by the beast, and then make sure your tank is alive. If you're in a lot of trouble, feel free to cast your Spirit Walker's Grace and heal the tank on the move. And also, don't be scared to pop some cooldowns, especially on fortified weeks, because the idea of this room is basically to make a huge pool. We didn't do it all at once, but I've seen tanks who pull everything in here all at once, which is a bit scary. There's also a way to skip one of the bee packs that float around, but then you have to be careful while fighting the boss. So many things to do here, but from a healer perspective, it's not a very interesting room. You cannot do much damage because you're constantly on the move, and then you have to heal everybody while moving, which is not fun at all. In any case, though, your group is probably going to be taking a little bit more damage on a fortified week, but there's nothing scary here, as long as you don't pull all the bees at once and they charge one person and one shot him. If people watch their feet, it should be a relatively easy trash. Once you kill all the mobs, the boss comes alive, and I actually have a guide for this boss on my channel. You can watch that video, but it's relatively easy boss if you do the mechanics right. If you don't, it's a very, very hard boss. It has been nerfed, we need to point that out, so it's much easier now. But in the beginning, it's just tank and spank. He does an ability that's a tank buster. Let me see what the name is, because I don't remember it. Bark Breaker, that's the one. So that shouldn't be scary. It shouldn't be scary even on Tyrannical. Your tank shouldn't be taking that much damage out of it, but that's basically the only thing to heal at this point. Then he does the Germinate. So usually you want to stack your group and go in circles, so all those little flowers that spawn from the Germinate are basically on top of the boss, and then you can just cleave them down. At this point, you don't care about cooldowns, because the flowers are dormant, they don't do anything, so just cleave them down passively. Then he summons the branch that you just saw, which is that little tree. It does a healing cast that you need to interrupt, and once it dies, it will leave that circle on the ground that you need to go inside, otherwise you have a debuff on you, which is going to just stick you down. This debuff also stacks if you get 2 applications of it, so make sure that you're in that little circle once the tree dies. Then it's basically rinse and repeat, but the boss has an energy, and at 100 energy he does that little AoE that you saw that usually aligns with the second set of adds. So this is where you actually want to pop a cooldown. Spirit Link is great, even Ascendance and anything. It's very important to survive that part, because this is actually what kills people, right? The rest of the fight is just the tank buster, and once he does actually the AoE stomp, the flowers come alive. Now, it sucks if you're a shaman, because the flowers will do poison debuff on everyone they hit, especially your tank, and it stacks pretty high, and it starts ticking the tank down. Now, we do have a poison cleansing totem, but it only removes 1 stack of that poison, so it's basically useless because your tank is going to get to 40, 50, 60, 80 stacks very quickly. So in this case, I'm lucky that I have a paladin and I have a monk, which can cleanse that. But if you do not have a tank or a monk or anyone who can cleanse it, then you're in a big trouble. Because then I guess the only way to survive is kill the mobs as quickly as possible so the tank gets as little stacks as possible and then just heal through them. On hierarchies, though, that's very, very hard and almost impossible, so very, very bad design by Blizzard, because if you're a shaman or I think a priest, they basically don't invite you into Algeth'ar's academy, you know, if you don't have a paladin tank. Anyway, rinse and repeat, kill the small branch, make sure you're in the circle when it dies, and then when the boss stomps, make sure you have a cooldown to heal everybody up, and then cleave down the adds. The last little branch we didn't kill because we just interrupted and killed the boss because the boss was low, but otherwise you want to kill that as quickly as possible because you don't want that branch to be alive once the germinate starts, because if it dies at the same time, it will be very hard to stay in the circle while the flowers are spawning. This mob, the next trash that we're killing, the Guardian, okay, obviously the AoE on the ground, you just run out of that. Don't get hit by it. On hierarchies, it hits pretty hard. But the more scary part are those tornadoes that he summons. Now, if they hit you, and I think somebody gets hit here in just a second, they do a lot of damage. On Fortified, they probably one-shot you. So when you see him casting the Storm Slash, then just start moving because you see indication on the ground where the tornado is going to spawn, but there's very little time to move out of it. So if you just hesitate for a second, you see my hunter got hit here. This is 18 non-fortified weeks, so he almost got killed. Definitely dead on fortified week, right? So as you can see, I started moving right away. If I was just half a second slow, that would hit me and it would probably kill me because we're relatively squishy, right? So that's the main thing here. Keep moving when he casts a Storm Slash and make sure you don't get hit by the tornado because here you can save somebody if he gets hit, but the hierarchy, less likely that's going to happen. All right, then we have the small birds. They do some damage to your tank, so make sure to stun and CC them as much as possible, but they're not that scary. As long as you kill them fast, of course. As you can see, my tank has now 4 or 5 debuffs. This is a stacking damage debuff. So on 45 weeks, be prepared here to heal your tank. Also be prepared for your DPS to pull aggro on the pool. So as you can see, my monk pulled aggro on this pool and instantly died. So be prepared for situations like that here. The next 2 pools have bigger birds in them. So the stacking debuff on the tank is still there, and the big birds also do a frontal, which is this gust. Obviously move out of that, and they also have a cast that buffs the rest of the birds, which is interruptible though, so watch for that, especially if you're running interrupt, which you should be in any case. Alright, so this is it for this pack. There's one more pack like that after that. Nothing interesting, I don't think so. Of course, again, on fortified weeks, it should be harder to kill those. And also when the birds land, you saw those little puddles on the ground. Make sure to move out of them, because I think they can one-shot you as well. Alright, then the boss, I actually have another guide for this boss as well. Not really a guide, it's just a small tip, but this boss could be very, very tricky, especially if you don't do it correctly. Now, once the boss lands, there's going to be 3 balls on that platform that you need to throw in one of the little circles that you're going to see on the sides. And once you throw them, the boss is actually going to come alive and you will fight the big bird called Kraut. Now, usually you don't have lust for this fight. You want the lust for the Veximus boss. So keep in mind that this could make it a little bit harder. There are routes that you can use in actually to have lust for both of the bosses, but you know that let's put that into the advanced section. So as you can see, we throw the balls. I go to the side so that I can drink here and not get hit by the fire puddles on the ground that showed up when the boss lands. And the boss is going to do several things. So the first thing is a tank buster, and it's going to hit your tank hard. The Savage Pack, as you can see, it leaves a debuff, so make sure to heal your tank. That's actually your only job in the beginning. The next mechanic is that Screech that he just did, and this is going to be AoE that hits everybody in your party. Once that happens, though, you shouldn't be in a big hurry to heal everybody up, because the only other mechanic right now is just a frontal that you can dodge, which means that there's no incoming damage if you get hit by the Screech instantly, so you can take your time to heal everybody up and prepare for the next Screech. The Screech, though, leaves a debuff on you, which is stacking, so every subsequent Screech makes more and more damage to your party. There's still no damage after the Screech, apart from the tank buster, right? But you're going to see in a second the third Screech is going to do even more damage, and so forth and so forth. Now, you can probably survive 4 Screeches on this key level even without defensives, and of course for the last Screech, you can always pop a defensive so that it doesn't kill you. I typed in chat before we pull the boss and told everybody wait for 4 Screeches before we do the next mechanic, which we'll do in just a second, and that is just to give you more time in this phase, because as you can see, I popped my shift here for the 4th Screech, so I don't take much damage, and we could probably go for 5th as well, but we know that at this level we can kill the boss relatively fast, so we just decide to go for 4. Now, once you throw the balls around in one of the circles, once you throw 3 of them in the circles, the debuff from the Screech clears, right? So this reduces the damage that you'll be taking from subsequent Screeches, but every circle introduces an extra mechanic to the fight. So the fire circle, which is right now left on your screens right when you land on the platform, does those fire circles on the ground. So that's the only extra mechanic that this adds, but as you can see, this is now going to make you move a lot. Not only you, but also the melee, the tank, so it makes the fight a little bit harder. On the higher keys, if you get hit by those circles on the ground, you're dead. On lower keys, it actually leaves, it hits you for a lot, of course, and then it leaves a debuff on you, which could be healed through on lower keys, but generally just don't get hit, right? The other advice that I can give you here is, as you can see, the monk got hit right now, insta-dead. There's no healing to that, right? The other advice I can give you is try to clear Thundering a little bit earlier, because you don't know what's going to happen. Like, you might have to move away from people because of the fire patches on the ground. You might get targeted by the frontals, so you have to run again, as you can see right now again. So don't wait to clear the Thundering at the last possible moment. And of course, the boss does the Screech over and over again. One other thing to mention here that's very important: when he does the Screech, there's a little circle around you. You have to make sure that there is no other people standing in that circle, because if that's the case, you take double damage and you get 2 stacks of the Screech, which on higher keys could basically, if you're not at 1 stack, could actually instantly kill you. We have another dead here. People are not playing clear, but luckily the boss is almost at the end. We did throw the balls in that other circle, as you saw in just a few moments ago, to clear the 3 or the 4 stacks that we had from the debuff, and that it introduces those winds that basically blows you to the side. The tornadoes will throw you up, and the winds will just blow you to the side, making it even harder. So basically the idea here is keep the boss into the first phases as long as possible, so you have less mechanics to deal with, and when the Screech damage becomes unbearable, throw the balls into one of them and keep going. Now, people debate which circle to throw the balls in first, because the fire doesn't make you move that much. Actually, it makes you move, and it can kill you, right? While the winds only blow you to the side. So the winds technically cannot kill you instantly, but, you know, pick your poison, that's your choice. Alright, up to the next trash. So there's few types of mobs here. First, you see that big snake over here, the arcane charger, whatever. So this one is going to target somebody in your party. You see that big blue circle right now on the warrior, and it's going to charge him, doing some damage, which is healable, right? But you can also line of sight the charge. So there's like a big dome here that we can use. You can go to the breach a little bit forward and use the pillars there, right? It's not that easy to line of sight, but if you do it, basically your party takes less damage. The Ravager also does the frontal after they jump. If you line of sight, he'll still do the frontal. It will be just without the jump. Other than that, he has those little Ravagers, the little snakes around, and they just do the same without the frontal. They do much less damage though, and they're all stunnable, so you can try to CC them and cleave down while you deal with the big mob, which obviously has much more health. So people will be taking damage here, right? Make sure to stay relatively close to your group if you are eating the charges, so that your melee doesn't have to run to Narnia to get uptime on the big snake, right? And then just spot heal the small charges from the rest of the snakes. Those are relatively easy, but as you saw, we actually put another group on top of them. And the other type of trash here has those mana fiends. So they will be in every group. They do a couple of things. So one of them is the mana void. This one, if it goes off, of course all of them are interruptible, but if the mana void goes off, it puts a debuff on one of the players with a small circle around them. Once the circle expires, they take damage, and you also lose mana. So if you're going to interrupt something, that's better to interrupt than the surge. The surge is just a single target burst, which technically you can heal through, but the mana void is a little bit more dangerous. Now, all of these packs, as you can see right now, we have a spellbound battle axe. There's also a spellbound scepter, and there's also books in some of the trash that you're going to see before the next boss. All of those have a certain ability. So the battle axes have a cleave, which just puts a nasty debuff on your tank. Obviously you need to heal the tank there. I don't remember what the books do. They're the least scary. I think they have like a single target cast or something like that. And then there's the scepters. The scepters, actually the books, I think they do a mana leech or something. I'm not sure what the ability is called, but it's a channel and it puts somebody into sleep if the channel starts going, but you can interrupt it even after that starts. So they're actually not harmless, of course. And then the scepters have a must interrupt cast, Mystic Blast, I think it's called, which is huge AoE to your whole party. And if that goes off unfortified, it could actually wipe you. So basically, the interrupt order here is Mystic Blast, then the books. There's a unruly textbook in the next pack that we're pulling, and there's a scepter at the pack at the bottom of your screen. So that's the priority. So mana drain after that, and the surges are basically the least of the priorities for interrupts. There was the book casting here. I think somebody else interrupted it. And all of these mobs are actually stunnable. So you can capital them and use any kind of other CC to interrupt them. Because as you can see, there's like five casters right now, all of them doing their own thing. So it's very hard to keep everything interrupted. As a shaman and as a healer, I think your main priority here is to, as long as there's no assignments, of course, is to target that spellbook or the scepter and make sure those important casts do not go off, and then just hope that the mana voids are interrupted by your party members. So that's the last pack before the next boss. So there's a book here, and there's the Mystic Blast on top of your screens from the scepter. That's the most important one, as I said, and then the surges with the least importance to interrupt. This trash could actually be very hard to kill unfortified, and also, as you can see, my tank is actually pulling one pack at a time right now. It becomes very chaotic if you pull two packs, especially if you pull on top of the scepter, because, as I said, there are interrupts that simply cannot go off, and if that happens, you might wipe. So in pugs, I would highly recommend, especially on lower keys, don't pull everything at the same time, because it's much harder to manage. Alright, Vaximus is the next boss. This is actually probably the hard boss here. The first thing he does, it's a frontal, so make sure you're not standing behind your tank, and then he drops those mana bombs that you need to soak before they reach the boss. Arcane Explosion is the frontal, and the orbs are basically, once you soak them, you see that you get a debuff on you. You take a little bit of a damage, but then the debuff increases the damage exponentially. So the next orb that hits you is going to hit you for twice that amount, and so forth and so forth. You can dispel the debuff, but there's few strategies here. You can either let the tank soak all of them and then dispel him, or you can have everybody in your party just soak one, and then you don't worry about that too much. Arcane Fissure is the most important thing here. So as you can see, that was AoE that pushes you back. First thing to know here, make sure you're not facing one of those puddles on the ground, because you don't want to get pushed into them. They tick and they hit you pretty hard. The other thing that happens after the Arcane Fissure is those things on the ground, those puddles on the ground. If they hit you, they one-shot you. So I know there's a lot of damage going on, and it's hard to heal at this point, but watch your feet, right? Because if you get hit by the things on the ground, you're dead, and there's nothing to heal after that, right? And then the mana bombs is the other mechanic here. You saw that little arrow on top of your head. After that debuff expires, watch your feet here, as you can see, right? The monk got hit, so he died. So after the blue arrow on your head expires, you drop that puddle on the ground. And you have to move quickly out of it because the debuff itself does some damage to you. And then the patch on the ground also takes pretty hard. So that's all the mechanics that the boss has, but there is a point where you get the mana bombs, which do some damage to you, then you take some damage from the puddle on the ground, and then the boss does Arcane Fissure almost instantly after that. Let me see if that's the point of the fight. No, there we go. So, right, as you can see here, it's mana bombs and fissure right away. This is the scariest part in this fight, because usually there is some time in between the bombs and the fissure, but at some point they align. So everybody just needs to pop a defensive, because usually you're spread, it's hard to heal, and your job after the mana bombs is basically to try and top everybody up as quickly as possible so that the fissure doesn't kill people off. That's it. As I said, the bad part here is overlapping, because the bombs themselves, as long as people don't stay in the patches for too long, are not going to kill you, and the fissure is also not going to kill you as long as you don't stay on the blue puddles on the ground. But once those two mechanics overlap, this is when you need to pop defensives. This is where you need to be prepared to do the big healing, because this is when people could actually die. It's good to have Lust for this boss. We did. This is probably the boss that is hardest here. As I said, the first boss is easy if you do mechanics right. Here, you don't have much of a choice, because if mechanics overlap, you know, you just have to heal through them and survive. So if you can do this boss, I guess the rest of this dungeon should be relatively easy for you. Now we're going to go through the bridge to the first starting area. There's 2 packs here that you can skip if you would like. We're going to pull them, but technically this trash is a little bit harder than the trash that we're going to be doing before the last boss. The trash before the last boss could be tricky, but generally it's very easy to do, and there's a lot of trash before the last boss, so if you are lacking percentage, you can easily make it up there. So there's the acid rain here, which is cast by one of the mobs as well. Obviously that's easy to dodge, just watch your feet, don't stay in the puddles, but of course with the other mechanics and the Spiteful, this could be tricky some of the weeks. All right, one more thing to say here. If for some reason you want to change your debuff from the first mobs in this area, you can now talk to a different one and it will change your debuff. So let's say you don't care about your verse anymore, which is what I took in the beginning. I can go and take my crit or my haste now, and it will just give you the next debuff if you decide to min-max this way. All right, so now we go up these stairs, and the trash here, as I said, could be tricky, but generally it's pretty easy. So the first type of mobs that we see here are those warriors. We can call them this way, which every now and then are going to start spinning. The Astral Whirlwind, which hits very hard, especially on Fortified. It is stunnable, but there's also a lot of these mobs. So here I would just say be prepared to cast some heals on your melee, because they will eventually run out, but they can get a tick or two from the Whirlwind, and if that happens, then you know, you can try and save them. If they don't run out, there's no saving them. The Invoker is the other type of mobs. This one does 2 casts. The Arcane Missiles you want to interrupt. This is just a ongoing damage to usually your tank, but I think they can target anyone in your party. So just interrupt that, and you don't have to deal with this damage, and you don't have to heal through it. They also do another cast, which is Astral Bump, I think is the name, which puts a circle around you, but that circle actually does damage to the rest of the mobs as well. So if that is on you, not everybody does it, but you can optimize your damage a lot by doing so. Now in here, actually, I saw that we're going to get hit by the Thundering, right? I was too far behind, blocked by a shade, and that's why I didn't run in, because I knew that we're going to get hit. So I went back and I hoped that I can survive it. I didn't. Obviously, that's a bug. We're not on comms. I couldn't yell at my tank to come back. Unfortunate, right? But luckily, the trash here doesn't do that much damage. If you interrupt the arcane missiles and you stay out of the whirlwinds, pretty much my group should be able to survive as long as the tank is alive without me. Now, this kind of like doesn't allow me to show you the Astral Bump, but as I said, the circle around you, you want to put it on top of the mobs. There's a patrol here, by the way. You'll make sure to avoid that if you're not pulling it. So you want to hit the mobs and not hit party members at the same time. This is going to speed up the kill time of those trash packs very, very quickly. All right, and then the last boss is relatively easy as long as you don't die on the frontal. You can watch some videos on my channel where that happens, but so the boss is just going to spank your tank initially, and then he's going to target somebody and put an energy bump on them. You can dispel that, you don't have to, it's going to do the damage anyway, but it also leaves a debuff on that person. I'd rather even say don't dispel it if it's on melee, let them run out and make sure, because it does AoE once you dispel it, right? Make sure they're away from other people. Now, apart from the bump, the boss is also going to draw you in, as you saw. Just run out as quickly as possible. That's very important because he does an AoE, and I think it one-shots you if you stay in. And then the debuffs that you see on the people that come from the energy bump and randomly from the boss, once you get to 3 stacks, you're going to drop this big circle on the ground. Astral Breath is the frontal. Make sure you move away quickly from that, because you can actually die very easily to that if you're not quick enough. So at 3 debuffs, 3 stacks of the debuff, you drop those circles on the ground, which remain there, and as you can see, they will start spitting out balls in all directions. So when you see that you are at 2 stacks, make sure that you're standing, if you have a designated point where you try to stack those puddles, make sure you're standing there. If not, try to be close to a wall. You don't want those big circles in the middle of the room, because they will be spitting balls in all directions. And that's very bad. So right now I'm 2 stacks, so I will try to stay close to that back wall, and when I get the 3rd stack, that puddle is going to be there as well. I'm also trying to stay close to the other circle. Obviously, you don't want to stay very close, so you get hit by a ball if that happens. But you have to find the balance, right? You want to stack them as close as possible, but you also don't want to get hit by the balls and eventually die. At this level, the balls do not kill you instantly, but obviously you can also get hit more than one, and that would be fatal. So I'm still at 2 stacks. I'm waiting for the boss to target me. I'm trying to bait it and basically drop my puddle there. But it didn't happen, so now I'm on this side. I'm still standing close to the wall, because there we go. So the energy bump It's still not on me, right? At this point, it's just dodging, right? Basically, nobody should be taking damage here if they're dodging everything, if they're dodging the circles, and if they're dodging the frontal, etc. Obviously, the longer the fight goes on, the harder it is to dodge, but I also had a fight where I died in the beginning, and they killed the boss without me, right? So technically, there's no need of a healer on this fight. You can just DPS, but in reality, as we know very well, you see I dropped the circle right now at the back, so that's a good bait. But in reality, people will get hit by balls, so you have to try and save them. Your tank should also be relatively fine. There's this boss doesn't have a huge tank booster, so as long as nobody dies to the frontal, you should be fine. But as I said several times already, people will make mistakes, so that's your only job here. The rest of the time, make sure you clear your thundering, make sure you're dodging balls, and you can just DPS. The big circles on the ground will eventually start disappearing, but as you can see, there's a lot right now on the ground, so don't count on that. Try to bait them close to walls, and then just dodge the balls. It's easier to dodge the balls when they're close to a wall. So that's it. As you can see, I consider this to be one of the easier dungeons. Probably the Veximus boss is the only hard part here, but there's also a lot of mechanics, a lot of casts. If you don't do correctly, obviously the bosses become unkillable, and the trash could one-shot you, and so forth and so forth. Alright, so hopefully that was useful to you. Algeth'ar's Academy, the Harry Potter Academy. Let me know what you think about those comments. Let me know if you want to see more comment videos on my channel. You can subscribe to watch some Mythic Plus and Resto Shaman tips. So thanks for watching, happy healing, and see you in the next video.